comes in here. Okay. You guys see the screen?
No, we don't
No.
see anything.
Not yet. Okay.
You're good.
Still nothing here. Okay, you see it? Okay, cool. Let's see if this part works. I might just run right this. Okay. So I said grateful to be on this call. Thanks for the kind words. So I just want to take a deep dive into culture. I've been with pros for about a year and a half, going on 2 here shortly, and I think the thing with rapid growth with pros, you have the right vehicle, but I think what's kind of separated us and some other teams that I've noticed is just the culture they have. And so the biggest thing is like, what is culture? Like the definition of culture is the collective behaviors, beliefs, and values shared by members of an organization. It shapes how people behave, communicate, and make decisions. I got a quote here: culture is not something you can buy or sell. It's something you create and sustain through your actions. I think culture is oftentimes confused for like a work hard, play hard mentality. What I mean by that is I think people think, oh, like come over here, man, our culture is great. What is your culture? Oh, like we're a bunch of buddies and we party on the weekends and we go on some cool trips in the off season. Like we got a really badass culture. And I just don't think that's the case. Like I've been on teams and things like that have had some really cool guys, but not necessarily a great culture as far as development and getting me and other people into a better spot as far as growth. And so there's a couple of things in culture that I think is really important, especially when I look at my business and the things that we've done. That's helped me out a lot. One of the biggest ones is organizational culture. What I mean by this is like the standards that you set, right? What standard do we hold? What are the doors we how many doors do we knock a day? How many deals do you have to get a month to stay on the team? Like we have a probation period where if you don't get X amount of deals, like you're on probation, right? We're only as great as our weakest link. How many days a week are we meeting, right? How many days a week are we working? How many talks a day do I need to get, right? That to me is building that culture is what standards do we set, and they've got to be realistic to uphold, right? Some people set a culture that's too unrealistic, and so then no one achieves it, right? If I say everyone in this office has to knock 200 doors a day or you're fired, the first couple of days everyone's going to do it, but eventually people will fall off. And so when it comes to standards and creating that core culture through organization, they have to also be realistic to to obtain and to uphold. Okay, with standards comes expectations, right? What do I expect of my people, and what do they expect out of me, right? When we start an office, or we're all leaders on this call, what expectations do everyone know that I'm going to do for them? But at the same time, what do I expect out of them, out of them as well? Like I said, you can only expect what you inspect, right? If I inspect the business and I make it organized, that's what I expect as far as long term. The hardest thing that I've seen some organizations lack is that they'll start with something. Maybe if they have 5-10 guys, they'll say, hey, this is the expectation. And then they try to get 40-50 guys and they try to completely change the expectation based off how many guys they have. I think the biggest thing when it comes to standard expectations, like it has to be set from day one, and it has to be upheld from day one. And what this allows you to do is allows individuals in that group to uphold the standard, and it doesn't have to always come from you. I think that's what's helped us out a ton is we have some really core leaders that just understand our standards and understand our expectations. And so when you get a new guy in, there's no missing. Everyone knows what it takes to be a part of, at least in my region, United. And there's no questions. You ask anyone what's the standard on United, every single person will have the exact same answer. Or if you're in your office and you ask someone the standard and you ask 5 people the standard, if they don't know, that is maybe where we have to reset that framework. Okay. And another part of our organization is the systems and processes. We rise or fall because of our systems. Are they easy to understand? Right. Hey, we have correlation every single day at 11 o'clock, right? It doesn't waver, right? When I'm looking at offices and just myself, what's worked and what's not, the times that I was like, okay, go straight to hood and go knock doors, right? A lot of the people in this industry, especially if you're looking at setters, are in the younger demographic, 20, 21, 22 years old, if they're having a hard time, it's so hard to expect them to go out and work the next day. If I've just been having a really rough go at it, it's so hard to say, hey, we don't have any correlation. We're not meeting today, but just go hit the hood and go knock your doors. A lot of them are saying, I just don't even want to go out because no one's forcing me to. Okay. And so that's what part of our systems. The biggest thing as well is creating systems that are easy to understand, right? You have a pitch training, realistic, objection handling. You have a schedule. It's something that it's easy to understand. And I can give someone a pamphlet. We have like a new hire packet, and they can go through everything, and they know exactly what we do on a day-to-day basis. They know exactly what they're supposed to say. And it's universal. Everyone says the same thing. There's no one-off guys, or not some guys over here doing this, some guys over here doing that. And the biggest thing with this is when you start to duplicate yourself, right? Everyone in this call, we're trying to develop not sales people, we're trying to develop sales leaders. It's so easy to duplicate yourself because the systems are the same from the top to bottom. Okay. Um, the next biggest one is leading by example, right? Everyone throws this out, but a lot of people, like, again, to go back to the first slide, a lot of people think culture is just the hype, right? Like, we have a good team meeting, and we do some good chants, and we play some good music before we get in there, and everyone's just super energized. That only will take you so far, right? You can only ask people to do what you're willing to do yourself, right? So culture is really shaped by your actions, not your words, right? It's so hard for me to stand in front of my people and say, hey, go knock 100 doors a day if I've never shown them that 100 doors is possible, right? So whenever personally I start a team or I start a blitz, I say, hey, this is the blitz, this is what we're going to do, this is the standard, this is the expectations. It's 100 doors. That first day, I am the first one that goes and knocks 100 doors, so I can come back tomorrow and say, hey, this is possible. If you didn't do it, right, we need to get you on the same page here, right? And so I can't go ask someone to do something I'm personally not willing to do, because especially in my experience, I've started as a rep. Nothing goes unnoticed. Everything we do or do not do, people will see. So if I'm going home after a meeting, and I'm said, okay, go to work, I'm making my people go to work, and I'm going home and just hanging out, people do start to notice that. And the problem with that is that's when people start to leave, and that's when your culture starts to die. So you can have all the hype in the meeting, you can be the hype guy, but if you're not doing anything behind closed doors, whether it's recruiting, whether it's training, whether it's something of that nature, people will start to notice that. And then you get murmurs of, well, why is this guy getting override on me? Why is this guy making money on me when he doesn't do anything? All he's done, he's been in the industry for 10 years. He was handed title, and they just pay him accordingly, right? The biggest thing when it comes by leading example too is like self-development. That's the biggest thing for me is, what are my habits? What are my traits? What's my daily routine? People, there's no mistaking. People know that I'm doing something, right? Well, there is knocking doors. It's not, if you're a divisional, you're a regional, like, the expectation, you don't go knock 6, 7 hours a day. If you're doing that, we're probably not doing it right. But they do know I'm doing something. Whether I'm bringing new guys in the office, great. Casey's recruiting. Or I'm running sales trainings, great. Casey can still train us how to sell, right? And so it's just constant self development, reading books, things like that. Allowing yourself to provide value, to provide influence, right? That's the only people stick around, is they feel like value is being provided by their leaders, and that really starts by leading by example. Okay. Another thing is building culture through trust. I think trust and transparency are the most important thing. Like, how much do I prioritize that? Right. The biggest thing I see is, things will happen in someone's organization, just won't tell their people, right? Because they think that's for the benefit of them. Where really it's honestly hurting your people. The more trust allows people to be psychologically safe. Who understands what psychologically safe? Who wants to share what that means? Does anyone know? Okay. Well, it just allows them to get that peace of mind, right? I'm in a good place, right? Feeling safe, allowing them to take risks, right? Feeling comfortable that, hey, if I take a risk and I fail, or I say something in a meeting and I get it wrong, no one's gonna, come down on me, right? That's what allows people to feel psychologically safe. They trust you, and they know that you trust them, and their respect goes both ways, right? The biggest thing is admitting when you're wrong. A lot of, you know people, even myself included, like, we just don't want to be wrong because our ego is so big, right? A lot of the people in this industry, our egos are so big. We think that we do no wrong. And that's the problem, is it builds no respect in your guys's in your office, and therefore builds no culture, right? So again, culture is not about the hype. It's not about having good people in the building. It's about, am I getting people And am I elevating people? Am I developing people into leaders, into being, basically replicants of myself? Another thing is just do it. Do I do what I say I'm going to do? Right? Consistency and reliability. Am I consistent? Am I reliable? When someone asks me to look at a recording, when someone asks me to do something, am I actually staying to my word? Right? When someone needs help with a project, a pipeline, commissions, things like that, am I doing those things in a timely manner, or am I just saying, "Hey, go figure it out on your own. Here's the number. Go call them." Right? There's difference between doing everything for somebody, because I think it's really important that people do learn, and that the only way they learn is by doing it themselves. But there's another difference between saying, "Hey, I'm just going to offload all the work onto you. I'm going to make sure you do all the work," when maybe they're not educated enough or not put in a position to succeed in that given time. Okay, so I got a John Maxwell quote here: "Trust is the foundation of leadership. Without trust, there can be no leadership." And so I think the biggest thing with culture is having the leaders that develop that. It's so hard to develop a culture on your own. It's got to be developed through many, many different people that all uphold the standards and the expectations. Okay. The inclusiveness to establish culture. I think the biggest thing with establishing culture is developing that we over the me mindset, right? He said, obviously, we're all here, for different reasons. A lot of us are here for financial gain, for sure. But I have to start, in order to develop a culture, in order to grow, in order to have explosive growth like Solar Pros allows us to do, we have to care about our people, and we have to care about the team, right? Like it's not about, for me, for example, it's not about Casey, it's about United, right? It's about, my other orgs, my other DMs, my other people, allowing open feedback on the business, right? Like I'm a big guy that, like, I appreciate constructive criticism. For those who don't know me, I've only been in solar for 3 years. And so there's a lot of things that I need to learn. There's a lot of things that I can take from other people, whether you're just a new team in pros or you've been here since the beginning. There's just a ton of things that I can learn, but if I'm not willing and open for feedback, it's gonna be really difficult to have that explosive growth that it allows. So having that growth mindset's all a part of that. Just understanding that, hey, even though we've had a good year, we've had a good month, have a good quarter, there's always something I can improve on. There's always something I can do better to just do it better, right? If you grew, 2 times the amount of installs from this year to last year, why can't I do 4? Why can't I do 8 times the amount of installs? And I'm sure there's people out there that have the information that, if you compile, can get you closer and closer to achieving those metrics. Culture allows your people to develop their leadership abilities and empowers them to make decisions. Again, it empowers people to, you know, be vocal in meetings, be vocal in chats, hold the standard, right? It just encourages that open communication where they don't feel like they're going to be, punished for coming to you and with a problem. Maybe they're showing up late. Maybe they've got, family issues. Maybe they got issues on the doors. Maybe they're not having any success. Though they're willing openly coming to you. And for that, I think that's why I've developed a good culture, is because a lot of people in my organization, they believe that I have their best benefit in mind. They believe that I have the benefit of themselves in mind, and I'm not only just doing what's best for me, and just doing whatever I think is best for just myself and our leadership. I'm doing what's best for even that new rep that just onboarded yesterday. Okay, so I think inclusiveness in the organization is very, very important to establishing just a good overall culture. And it's especially, where's alignment, right? Are we all shooting for the same goals in mind, right? I think the big thing for me that I learned quickly is, if I say something that, hey, this is the goal, this is what we're going to achieve, people don't really want to work for something that I created, right? Like, no matter how much respect for me they have, no matter how good of a buddy that I am to them, it doesn't really matter to them if it's just my goal, right? And so the biggest thing I like to do is I sit down with all my leaders and we establish a goal that we're going to come up with together, and an action plan how we're going to achieve that goal. And so that way, when we go and really start, jumping off and doing this thing, we're all going on the same page, 100 miles an hour, but we're all chasing the exact same goal that we created together, in a unified manner. Okay. The top down alignment, right? Is there a clear vision? Right? Like, shout out to Josh Holland and Tegan, but there's no doubt in my mind that I know where they're going. And when they know, and just like Josh talked about last week on the call, if he knows where he's going, that's all that matters. And then as long as my people know where I'm going, that's all that matters. And so as long as the vision is clear and we're all on the same page and we all know what we're doing and why we're doing it, it's so easy to get culture, so easy to get people bought in, right? If I go on a blitz, or I do this or I do that, and I have an explanation of why that is, and it's reasonable, people will buy into that. But if I tell someone, hey, we can't blitz this market when they ask, and I have no explanation on why, it's just because I don't want to. That's really a good way to, in my personal opinion, deter your culture, to ruin your culture, because it's like, man, this guy's just, he's being a dictator, right? He's just running the ship, and he was handed a title, right? But if typically there's a rhyme or reason behind it, and it's important to share that rhyme or reason so people understand why you're doing what you're doing, and it's because we're chasing the same vision, the same goals, right? Another thing is encourages people to lead from the middle, right? Easy to hold the standard when there's alignment. So there's alignment, there's standards, there's expectations, there's goals, there's vision. It's easy for those people that are closers, setters, to hold that line. If it's always coming from me, it's always like I'm coming down on someone. I'm quote unquote cracking the whip, right? And I'm being that guy, right? That bossy manager. When I get my guys on the same page and they have that standard, it's so much easier when those guys lead from the middle rather than me just always leading from the front. People will listen to those people that are in the same position as them. When I say it, and they're like, "Well, he's in a different position to me. He's been doing it for 4 years. I can't replicate that." But when a guy who's only been doing it for 2 months, and a new guy comes in, says it, it's so much easier to duplicate because he says, "Hey, he's in the same exact spot as I am." Okay. And then when it comes to alignment, consistent communication. If there's changes in financiers, if there's changes in location, there's changes in permitting timelines or install timelines, it's so important that you communicate with that, especially with your leadership, so we're all on the same page, and so they don't find out things later on as like a shock and it hits them in the face. They should be able to understand these things before they even occur, and so to them it's not a surprise, right? And then the biggest thing for us is, what's our mission statement? I think that's the biggest thing when we're with relentless, and I think that's what's helped me a lot develop my leadership capabilities. Is it was so clear what relentless wanted to do, right? For those who know, Josh and Tegan, their motto this year was FEA. Everyone in relentless knows what that is. Everyone understands what that means for our group. And so it's just developing a mission statement that makes sense for your group, and you come up with it typically together. So United has a mission statement that we created that everyone can get on board with. And so that way, when people start to slack off, they start to waver on the standards, the expectations, we can always fall back on our mission statement and say, "Hey, this is why we're doing it. And this is what you agreed on. You agreed that this is what you're going to do. You made the mission statement, not me. And so we should probably abide by the something that you created, right? Or should we change the mission statement if we've changed our minds?" Okay. Creating culture about recognition and appreciation. I think this is a lot of big things that I pride myself on, is just not prioritizing my people is just not just a number. I don't want to get just 40, 50 setters in here and have one person. As long as you get a deal a month, that's all I care about, because I just get that one override check a month, right? I wanted people to know that, like, I genuinely care, right? I know about your family. I know where you're from. I know, how many siblings you got. Like, I know everything about your life because I genuinely care, and I make it my duty, my obligation to make sure you succeed, right? Within reason, right? As long as you follow the blueprint, you do what that we set out, and you follow your numbers. I'm gonna do everything I can to get you where you want to be, right? And so it's just, do you actually care about your people, or is just, I'm gonna grab any guy from Chipotle I can possibly find, throw him in the organization, not train him, throw him with the wolves, and hope that he survives. And if he doesn't, great, I'll rinse and repeat and do that until I find someone. Okay. I think the biggest thing is praising accomplishments, no matter how small or large, right? It's not, if someone got 100 deals, someone did this, someone did that, you have to praise. Like, sometimes it's just simply, I'm praising people for knocking their doors, right? For putting the input, right? I think that's the biggest thing we can control, is I can control the input, not necessarily all the output. And so when you praise someone for knocking their doors, in their mind, they feel like they failed today because they donated or whatever, they didn't have a set or didn't have a sale. But if I praise, like, "Hey, you were in there, you were in the field, you put in the hours," like, the results will come. They appreciate that from you. And then, do we only recognize the high performers? Am I only recognizing the guys that are doing 30 in a month, 25 in a month? I feel like everyone plays a role. Even that guy's only doing 4 deals a month, he plays a role. How can I get that guy from 4 to 6? How can I get that guy from 8 to 10? Right? The more that I recognize those people that maybe aren't the ones that are always on the leaderboard, that's how I get more buy-in, and that's how I build the culture, because it's everyone is important. I don't only prioritize just the people that I either A, like and that are my friends, or B, that are just making me the most money. Okay. And then acknowledgement enforces the behavior. When I acknowledge something and enforce that behavior, if I acknowledge you knocked your doors, or I acknowledge, you're, part of the book club and reading your pages, it enforces that behavior. If I just don't say anything, and whether you do it or not, most times, 9 times out of 10, people are just not going to do it because it's not being acknowledged. And so I think that's really important. A part of, creating a culture is like, you acknowledge what's going on, whether good or bad. And so that leads me into my last section here is a culture of accountability. I think accountability protects the brand. A lot of us are, myself included, are kind of scared to have those uncomfortable conversations. We'd rather just let them go. But accountability protects the brand. It protects the standard. It protects the expectations. Right? You let one guy do it, and you don't hold them accountable. Now everyone's doing it. Right? So things that we hold people accountable. If you don't knock your doors, you're doing push-ups. Right? It's something so small. But because of that, now everyone knows, like, hey, it means something to go hit our metrics. There's something there. I have to go do that, because if not, I'm going to be held accountable, and they understand that. And it's because I care about them, right? Without accountability, your people will suffer. If I don't hold people accountable, they will suffer, because, like I said, if I only do everything for my own agenda, and I just say, hey, whether that guy knocks 50 doors tomorrow, he knocks 100, doesn't matter to me. As long as he's out there, your people will suffer, because people will leave, right? The biggest thing, we all understand in door knocking and door to door is establishing your numbers. How many knocks to get a set? How many sets to get a sit? How many sits to get a close? How many closes does it take to get an install? Right. So when you know people's numbers and you hold them accountable, they're bound to have success, right?
I think so.
You have a question? Okay. So I said that's the biggest thing with us is just holding people accountable, having those uncomfortable conversations, but doing it out of respect and out of genuineness, because appropriate accountability drives results and earns respect. When you hold someone accountable, it brings more respect for you. They have more respect for you than when you don't. When you let them slack off, when you let them do what they want, that actually decreases your respect and decreases your culture, right? And it says you promote what you tolerate. So it promotes follow through. You and your people take ownership of their actions, right? And so when you do something, you mess up, you allow them to hold you accountable. And when they do something and they mess up, they allow you to hold them accountable. And it works both ways. That's what drives culture. I think that's a big thing in our organization. That's helped us create the culture that we have is through a culture of accountability. And so the last quote I'll finish off with is, taking responsibility for your actions, your work, and your decisions is a foundation of personal and professional success. So those who take responsibility typically are the ones that are going to grow the fastest. Just a simple fact. We admit when we're wrong. Our people admit when they're wrong, and we use that as learning opportunities. Typically, that's just the foundation you lay, and brick by brick, you're going to continue to climb the ladder and have incredible success. So I'll finish off with that. If anyone has any questions, we'll open that up.
Dang, great job, Casey. Those 9 slides, I feel like, was so much power going into the summer season and the building blocks for success of any team or manager. For those that don't know, Casey's team won Champs Pro Conference last year. So not only is Casey like actually living out, like it's not just a training on what he says. It's like, dude, he lives it out. His team is a championship caliber team, and I'm super excited for what Casey and United are going to do this summer. So Clayton asked me to close out. So if there aren't any questions, Casey, thank you so much for imparting your wisdom into the 96 people. But if there's no questions, the call is over. So thank you all for attending.